Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So
Here we are.
Here we are doing Bhagavatam
Indoors.
Bites. We're going to read today. We actually read this already, but unfortunately, we were down by the
East River,
and it was a windy day. And before we started, the camera and tripod blew over. And I picked it up and everything seemed to be okay, but then we saw later that the little adapter that plugs in the microphone had cracked and it was broken and it didn't really record the sound so well. So even though there were a lot of really powerful things that we said and you've missed all of it, we're going to try to recreate it even though we don't remember anything that happened.
No, we're old. We don't remember.
Okay, so we're, just a preface, so we're,
Canto 4, Chapter 22, Text 22. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, text 22. Attachment for the Supreme can be increased by practicing devotional service, inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, applying Bhakti Yoga in life, worshipping the Yogeshwara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by hearing and chanting about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These actions are pious in themselves. Purport. The word Yogeshwara is applicable to both the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and his devotees also. In Bhagavad Gita, this word occurs in 2 places. In the 18th chapter, text 78, Krishna is described as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the master of all mystic power, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna. Yogeshwara is also described at the end of the 6th chapter, text 47, Same Yukta Atmano Mata. This Yukta Atmana. What? Yuktatama indicates the topmost of all yogis, the devotees, who can also be called Yogeshwara. In this verse, Yogeshwara Upasana means to render service to a pure devotee. Thus, Narottam Das Thakur says, Charya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Payiche Kiba. Without serving a pure devotee, one cannot advance in spiritual life. Prahlad Maharaj also has said, Naisham Matis Tavad Urukramangrim Sprisati Anata Pagamo Yadata Mahishanam Padarajo Abhikshikam Nishkinshananam Navriti Vrinita Yavat. One should take shelter of a pure devotee who has nothing to do with this material world, but is simply engaged in devotional service. By serving him only, one can transcend the qualitative material condition. In this verse, it is recommended Yogeshwara Upasanaya, that one can serve the lotus feet of the topmost yogi or the devotee. To serve the topmost devotee means to hear from him about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the mouth of a pure devotee is to acquire a pious life. In Bhagavad Gita, text 28, it is also said that without being pious, one cannot engage in devotional service. Yesham tiv antagatam papam jnananam punya kamanam tiv dvandva moha nirmukta bhajanti mam drida vrat. To become fixed in devotional service, one has to become completely cleansed from the contamination of the material modes of nature. For work in devotional service, the first item is Ador Guru Ashrayam. One should accept a bona fide spiritual master, and from the bona fide spiritual master, inquire about one's transcendental occupational duties. Sadharma Pricha. One follow in the footsteps of great saintly persons, devotees. Sadhu Maga Anugamanam. These are the instructions given in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami. I think we read this in Matchless Gifts.
Mm-mm.
No? Maybe not then. But alright, that's where
Maybe, yeah.
we're old, we don't. But anyway, it's alright to repeat. It's a good test to see if you're actually listening. I think Sally will pick up on it. Alright. So, what was I going to say? Yogeshwara. Yes, I remember the points I made, but describing the devotee as the topmost yogi. That's a wrap. And that one should take shelter of a pure devotee. So I forgot what I was going to say now.
Well, I have something to say while you're trying to figure it out. What I remember, but it doesn't matter when I remember it, just because it came up again, is how in the verse, Srila Prabhupada does not refer to Yogeshwara. In the translation, he doesn't refer to Yogeshwara as the devotee. He refers to Yogeshwara as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in verse 1878, which is the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is referred to as Yogeshwara, and Prabhupada mentions that. But in 647, even though Prabhupada says the word is used twice in the Bhagavad Gita, the actual word is not used twice. Yuktatamo, or yuktatamo, is the word from 647, and Prabhupada says yuktatama. Means the topmost yogi. Okay, that's clear, but it's still not the same word. And the thing that came up for me is how people who would have a tendency to criticize, like me, critical critic, may say, but that's not exactly correct. Now, all of the things Prabhupada is saying, of course, matches up, and I even just looked up, Bhagavatam 7.532. The verse so eloquently quoted by my wife. That verse is the verse where Prahlad Maharaj is explaining to Hiranyakashipu, unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined towards materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. So like that. So he mentions how important it is to worship a devotee. So we understand that the devotee is very powerful, and many of the verses before this explain that very, very powerfully, very clearly. But somehow it just stands out to me, this word Yogeshwara, and then Prabhupada really goes on in the purport so far about that, and being attached to Adal Guru Ashraya, being attached to the Guru, who is a pure devotee, who is not God, but is treated as good as God. And so Prabhupada really, he qualifies the point, but still, it just confuses me. Why didn't, in the translation of Yogeshwara, why didn't it put like the, Krishna, or or the pure devotee, or something like that? It's not a critique exactly. It's just, it made me kind of think about it a little bit. Do you remember what you were going to say?
No.
Okay. So, we'll read the last paragraph. The conclusion is that to increase attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to accept a bona fide spiritual master and learn from him the methods of devotional service, and hear from him about the transcendental message and glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this way, one has to increase his conviction about devotional service. Then it will be very easy to increase attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if we want to increase our attachment to Krishna, we have to accept a spiritual master and learn from him the methods of devotional service and hear from him about the transcendental message. Then our relationship with Krishna will increase. So basically, Yasha Prasade, Bhagavat Prasade, Yasha Prasade Nagati Katopi, that by the mercy of Guru one gets Krishna, by the mercy of Krishna one gets Guru. So it's a very reciprocal relationship, but the idea is in Vedic culture that to approach God, we have to go through his servant. Or as Prabhupada said, Guru is the dog. Prabhupada said, I am the dog of God. It's like, so you have to go through the servant to get to the master.
Yeah, but even though the guru may feel, I am the dog of God, it don't mean the disciple treats him like a dog.
Thank you for clarifying that.
It wasn't for you, it's for like everyone else.
yeah, everybody, you don't treat him like a dog, all right? It reminds me though of, and I don't know if I've told that story here, but when my spiritual master was first approached by the temple president of the temple I was in, and he asked him, he said he was going to request him to be my guru because I had said this is the person I want to take shelter of. And then later I was with him and I said, Maharaj, did the president ask you a question? He said, yes, he did. And I said, so what's your answer? Because I wanted to know if he was going to accept me. And he said, yes, I'm very happy to be your servant.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't think he asked you the right question. And so I said, but Maharaj, I don't want you to be my servant. I want you to be my guru. And he laughed. And then he said, yes, I'm very happy to be your servant. And it kind of clicked, I don't think it took the third time, but it kind of clicked that, oh, I get it. You see being the spiritual master as a service to the disciple. And then, of course, later, Srila Prabhupada, realizing more and more how Srila Prabhupada himself used to compare all of his disciples, that he would say that you all are the representatives of my Guru Maharaj, and my Guru Maharaj has sent all of you, and therefore he felt himself the servant of his disciples. And that's the correct mood. That's the mood of the spiritual master, to also see himself as a servant, although he acts in the role as the boss or the master. Like that.
Yeah, I was going to 2 points on that. First is, it is the correct mood, because if you can imagine how when you have even just one person showing you awe and reverence, what that can do to your false ego and the way you may act. And if you have people in most countries, and that in the hundreds or the thousands, devoting their lives to you and worshipping you,
every word.
Your pictures on their altar and asking you to name their babies or whatever, and then the more you can think of yourself as the lowest of the lowest, better for you, because we can see in our own line and other lines as well how it can be quite spiritually fatal if one doesn't maintain that mood. But the second point was that when I was at the manor many years ago with the wonderful Shruti Dharma Prabhu, who I used to drag with me to speak to Maharaj, rather not Maharaj, and I asked about aspiring, because the temple I was at weren't really doing anything, so it was his suggestion, just so Shruti Dharma Prabhu's suggestion. So I went there with two devotees, Radhika Priya and Prem Sankirtan, wonderful, who were my sort of mentors at the time. And I asked, Shruti Dharma Prabhu asked, and he looked at me and said, he was happy, he said, I'm your servant. And I was like, and I turned to Shruti Dharma Prabhu and said, is that a yes? In front of Maharaj. I didn't know what that was. I was like, wait, I don't understand. Am I aspiring or not? I remember saying, is that a yes? And then they all laughed and I thought, she's so stupid. And that was like, he said, yes, go away now.
I never heard that before. You never shared.
I know, just because when you get old, you forget things. But when you just shared your one, it came up in the bubbles of memories, like an ocean, and there's like waves coming back and forth. The Lord knows what else will come up.
Okay, let's move on to the next verse, text 23.
Alright, one has to make progress in spiritual life by not associating with persons who are simply interested in sense gratification and making money. Not only such persons, but one who associates with such persons should be avoided. One should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hare. One can be thus elevated by being disgusted with the taste for sense enjoyment. Purport. In the material world, everyone is interested in money and sense gratification. The only objective is to earn as much money as possible and utilize it for satisfaction of the senses. Srila Sukadeva Goswami thus described the activities of the materialistic persons. Nidraya riyate naktam viyavayena cha vavaya diva cha tehaya rajan kutumba baraneneva. Bhagavatam 2.1.3. This is a typical example of materialistic persons. At night they waste their time by sleeping more than 6 hours or by wasting time in sex indulgence. This is their occupation at night, and in the morning they go to their office or business place just to earn money. As soon as there is some money, they become busy in purchasing things for their children and others. Such persons are never interested in understanding the values of life. What is God? What is the individual soul? What is its relationship with God, etc. Things are degraded to such an extent that those who are supposed to be religious are also at the present moment interested only in sense gratification. The number of materialistic persons in this age of Kali is increased more than in any other age. Therefore, persons who are interested in going back home, back to Godhead, should not only engage in the service of realized souls, but should give up the company of materialistic persons whose only aim is to earn money and employ it in sense gratification. They should also not accept the objectives of materialistic persons, namely money and sense gratification. Therefore it is stated, Bhakti Pareshanu Bhavo Virakte Anyatra Cha. To advance in devotional service, one should be uninterested in the materialistic way of life. That which is the subject matter of satisfaction for the devotees is of no interest to the non-devotees.
And I think you're right. As you were reading, I was remembering
this one we read when the microphone.
Yes, and we did discuss the one previously, and it was in 26 seconds.
Sorry, everyone.
But a lot of new points came out, and if you criticize us, then
no one's criticizing us. They're all good people.
You're all, good people.
All right. So this last sentence, that which is the subject matter of satisfaction for the devotees is of no interest to the non-devotees. It reminded me when I was working, and then I would come to work on Monday, and we didn't work Saturday and Sunday. I worked in the government office. We didn't work much either during the week. But anyway, I'd come to work on Monday, and it was open plan office, and everyone chat. And then what'd you do at the weekend? Yeah. And then it's like my weekends when I was so busy with the temple. And especially when I was, one of the days going back, I would be running the temple shop by myself. And then the other days be doing admin. But then when I stopped doing that, there would just be more service to do anyway. It wasn't, but my point is my weekend, I was not actually at home. It wasn't like out partying, I was just doing stuff. So Mondays and I wasn't therefore rested either. But I would actually say, initially I respond by saying nothing. And it's so interesting, I'd say nothing because like here Prabhupada says that which is of satisfaction for the devotees is no interest to non-devotees, because I would think there's nothing I did that you're going to be interested in. Like I didn't say, I went to see this movie, I went to the pub, I went this, I thought, even though I was awake from 3:30, and then the time, whatever time I went to bed, and so much went on, it was actually nothing to them. It was nothing, if that makes sense. It's like, it was like black and white. It was like, I just can't get any connection there. Eventually I started to be more chilled and just be like, I was at the temple actually, we had this festival, I was doing, I was just doing stuff there, whatever. But it's true, it was like there was nothing to, so I just said nothing. I was knackered. I was It's like, God, what coming to work was rest. Oh, God. I remember that. It was so clear cut, like, I've got nothing to tell you.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things as we read that I was reminded. First, that I think it's important that this isn't taken out of context, how much we should avoid people who are not devotees. I think it can be a very dangerous thing. It means people won't want to go to work. They don't want to associate with their families.
Yeah.
Whether that means mom, dad, brother, sister, or whether it means
Spouse.
husband, wife, and children. So it can be a dangerous thing. And I'm not saying that like Srila Prabhupada said it and he got it wrong, because he also set such an example. In fact, someone just gave the example. The other morning, the Prabhupada met with one race car driver at the manor, actually, and he spent like 20 minutes to half an hour or more just talking about cars. So, but if you sit and talk about cars with Srila Prabhupada, there's it's a whole different experience than talking about with another driver or mechanic or something. So the point is that we have to learn how to give association without taking it. It means that we shouldn't start to value what a materialistic person values. It's not like that by associating with someone, it doesn't mean that, it shouldn't mean that we take on their qualities. Of course, the danger is that we become like that which we associate with, but we therefore have to be strong in our Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for someone who was a devotee who was coming and giving me their association, at the same time associating with me and being around me when I was doing all kinds of nonsense, but still they were a devotee. So it's a very fine line, very delicate thing that has to be handled maturely, I think, and we have to be very careful how we take this. In fact, Srila Prabhupada now states, and we spent a lot of time on the previous verse, so we're going a little longer than usual.
We didn't need to read the previous.
Yeah, and I'm really sorry, that's my fault. Although some nice stuff did come out.
All right.
Simple negation or giving up the company of materialistic persons will not do. See? So just giving up that company will not do. We must have engagements. Sometimes it is found that a person interested in spiritual advancement gives up the company of material society and goes to a secluded place as recommended for the yogis especially. But that will also not help a person in spiritual advancement, for in many instances such yogis also fall down. It's a very important point. Doesn't mean just negate, and go away on my own. No, doesn't mean that. As far as Gyanis are concerned, generally they fall down without taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. The impersonalists or the voidists can simply avoid the positive material association. They cannot remain fixed in the transcendence without being engaged in devotional service. The beginning of devotional service is to hear about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is recommended in this verse. Vina harer guna piyusha panat. One must drink the nectar of the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this means that one must be always engaged in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. It is the prime method for advancing in spiritual life. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also recommends this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. If one wants to make advancement in spiritual life, by great fortune he may meet a bona fide spiritual master and from him learn about Krishna. By serving both the spiritual master and Krishna, he gets the seed of devotional service, Bhakti Lata Bij. And if he sows the seed within his heart and waters it by hearing and chanting, it grows into a luxuriant Bhakti Lata, or Bhakti creeper. The creeper is so strong that it penetrates the covering of the universe and reaches the spiritual world, and continues to grow on and on until it reaches and takes shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. Just as an ordinary creeper also grows on and on until it takes a solid shelter on a roof. Then it very steadily grows and produces the required fruit. The real cause of the growing of such fruit, which is here called the nectar of hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is to water the creeper of devotional service by hearing and chanting. The purport is that one cannot live outside the society of devotees. One must live in the association of devotees where there is a constant chanting and hearing of the glories of the Lord. The Krishna consciousness movement is started for this purpose, so that hundreds of ISKCON centers may give people a chance to hear and chant, to accept the spiritual master, and to disassociate themselves from persons who are materially interested. For in this way one can make solid advancement in going back home, back to Godhead. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we also need that good association. We need the association of other strong devotees to keep us strong, to give us inspiration, to help us on our journey of hearing and chanting and making progress. And of course, Prabhupada sharing this beautiful analogy of the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of devotion, and how it turns into a Bhakti Lata and grows back to the lotus feet of the Lord. So, very nice. Any thoughts? Okay, we've gone way over. Thanks for hanging in there with us. Apologies for repeating the first verse, but I think you'll agree. Please, if any points stood out to you that you noticed that were different from the first time, then you can highlight those. All right, thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.